PSP Governor Diokno made international headlines after saying that Donald Trump is the biggest risk to the global economy. He discusses this with Bloomberg's Haslinda Amin at the Milken Institute Forum in Singapore. Let's take a listen.
That's one scenario, right? The other scenario is if he gets reelected, he'll be more sensible and do this thing, find the right solution, and the problem is solved, right? But that's the other risk. This problem will persist after getting a second term, because he'll say, "Look, I was voted because of my position." So let's see.
So it could get worse from here. Is that what you're saying?
It could get worse.
Is there consensus when central bankers meet that Trump is the biggest risk?
Yes. In our case, I'd like to point out that our monetary easing is a different nature from what's happening globally, because we increased my predecessor increased the policy rate by 175 basis points last year to meet to address the elevated inflation. Inflation reached 6.7% last year, and so now inflation is back to 1.7. That's a sharp decline. And our estimate is that maybe by our inflation last September will be about 1.4. So that's the nature of our monetary easing. We have more space. We want to normalize as soon as possible from the 1.75 increase last year.
Can I read into that? Does that mean we can expect a further 25 basis point cut next week? I mean, you've already promised this before or by November. Can we expect it next week?
Maybe.
Because that's not good enough.
The decision is not mine alone. There's a 7-man board, and we discuss, debate, and look at the data.
But inflation is the overriding factor. That will decide.
Of course. There are other factors like what's happening globally. Those are of secondary importance. It's really inflation that makes a difference in our decision next week.
We saw how oil prices spiked, and oil prices are pretty volatile right now. How does that play out in your decision?
Yeah, I asked my staff to review the situation, and the analysis is that if the price reaches as high as $90 per barrel, we're still okay. We'll still be within our inflation target of 3% plus or minus 1%. So that's 2 to 4. So, but at the same time, we have a recently passed law which says that in the event of an oil price increase, persistent, 3 months, of $80 per barrel, we can cut the tax on oil. So we're okay. We're prepared for that.
So pretty comfortable. How does that translate to in terms of your growth projection for the year?
Our growth projection this year is, as you know, the first half was 5.5 because of some delay in the budget. But there's a catch-up plan, and we are optimistic that we'll still hit 6% this year and maybe 6.5 to 7.5 next year.
What's the biggest risk to that projection?
Right now, I don't see any risk.
You've also talked about a 100 basis point cut in the RRR, the triple R. Could you shed some light on the pace of that cut? How will you be doing that?
The RRR, the reserve requirement ratio, was 20% before, and then it was cut by my predecessor to 18. Now, when I came in, I promised a 200 basis point cut over a period of 3 months. So it's 100 basis points, 50-50. So we're looking at another 100 basis points. It could come in as soon as possible. It could be coming on next month or November. But I made a promise. This is part of the new central bank, right? We want to be transparent, and we want to notify the industry of what we're doing, right? Ahead of time. My plan is to reduce the reserve requirement ratio to single digit by 2023. That's the end of my term. All right?
In terms of where the peso is right now, are you comfortable with the level of the peso and the movement of the peso?
Yes, very comfortable. As you know, we have a floating exchange rate. We allow the peso to be determined by market, by supply and demand conditions. We only intervene if there's a sharp increase or decrease to smoothen the fluctuations. So we haven't intervened for a long time, and we're very comfortable. Plus, we have right now, we have the highest gross international reserves ever, 86 billion. Okay, that's equivalent to 7.5 months of imports requirement. The rule of thumb is 3 is good enough, so we have 7.5.
We've seen how emerging market currencies like the peso, like the rupiah, like the Indian rupee are pretty susceptible to the movements of the yuan. Given that the yuan devaluation has been pretty stable and pretty gradual, I mean, do you see any risks to the emerging market currencies?
No, the peso is actually the second most appreciated currency among the countries in this part of the world. Okay? Next to Thai, of course, Thai has appreciated so much. The behavior of the yuan doesn't bother us too. In fact, we have an arrangement with China so that there can be direct transactions between yuan and peso. So we don't have to rely on the dollar, and we're doing the same thing for Japan. Okay.
Governor, just one final question. I mean, we're seeing how trade negotiations will resume in the U.S. How optimistic are you that a deal can come through?
Well, there are discussions, and I think they may come up with an agreement. But I think what is important is the nature of the agreement. Is it a substantial agreement or just a simple agreement so that it could be used as maybe for political purposes? Plus, after what has been done, it will take a while to unwind all these tax cuts, etc. There are now some movements both in China and the U.S. for their behavior, right? We don't know. It could take about, even if there's a decision in November, it will take a while before they can unwind the process.